Hello, and welcome to the sixth episode of Beyond Conscious, Becoming Multidimensional. Today is May 26, 2020, and I am your host, Asia Andromeda, founder of Multidimensional U. So this show exists to support humanity as it takes its next huge evolutionary leap, mainly in consciousness. And I share on the show extra dimensional perspectives and encouragement to inspire your own inner tech transfer from your own multidimensional self. You can catch up on past episodes and shows by visiting multidimensionalu.com/show. This is also turned into a podcast, and you can catch it, as you're traveling and catch up on past episodes. All right. So first of all, I'd like to thank a few donors. So thank you so much to Phil. I know that you donated the last couple of shows, so thank you so much for that. And I am just being encouraged. I can tell there are all these different signs coming from the universe, so to speak, about really showing up a lot more here on YouTube. So what do I mean by that? So for those of you who are interested in supporting me, YouTube just unlocked something on my videos called an applaud button. So thank you so much for those of you who have done the sticker emojis in the past and donating during this live show. I really appreciate that. You can also use the applaud. So this is all new to me. Bear with me as I get used to this whole platform. But I think it's a really interesting development, as I myself have been directed away from some of the past programs I've been running, and to really show up here in a much bigger way. And I know that, our community, our multidimensional metaphysical community, doesn't always have maybe the best perspective on some of the more mainstream channels, but my guidance is really unequivocal that this is where I am supposed to show up, as opposed to an alternative for whatever reason. I mean, I think we can all guess as to the way the algorithms work and the way that, we use tarot cards and any platform to bring information to ourselves. I can't tell you how many times I have heard from you, different subscribers, that they were looking for information or guidance, and then, my video pops up without them even having to search for it. So just look for me to show up in a much bigger way here going forward. All right, so announcements. We can talk a little bit about what is going on here in the next couple weeks. There's a lot going on astrologically that is not my forte. But I can tell you that we have quite a few eclipses coming up. Of course, the cycles of the moon, and there's a lot accelerating right now. And I'll tell a couple of stories here just about even my morning that I had this morning that tells me we're really moving into the next level of our human embodiment, right? Ascension is accelerating. Okay, so next week, Jude, my hubby Jude, who is a Tai Chi instructor, a very gifted one at that, is offering an online group class that begins June 2nd. And you can check out all of that on his website, zeropointtaichi.com. And then, of course, save the date for the solstice event coming in June 20th. Registration for that will open up the first week of June. If you aren't on my email list, that's where a lot of this stuff goes out. You can go sign up on the website, multidimensionalu.com/meditation, and you'll get my daily grounding and clearing meditation that tens of thousands of people have used. And it's helped people sleep better, reduce anxiety, just generally feel much better. Daily psychic hygiene. We cannot underestimate the value of that, can we? Okay, so I was instructed before I channel my Andromedan aspect today to do a little bit of the multidimensional self 101, because we do have some new subscribers and listeners. And I realize that it might be really helpful for you all to have a little bit more background with what is this lady even talking about? Right? So what are we talking about? The multidimensional self. All right. So in 2016, I like to speak from direct experience. And in 2016, I had an experience with my Oversoul. I was introduced to the fact that while we animate this consciousness, this body with a certain level of consciousness, we're also a much bigger field. And the way it presented itself to me was this beautiful glowing white, looked like the flower of life. Sacred geometry is the best way I can describe it. And then I was shown that there are all these different fractals, right? And that the human individuated aspect is just one aspect out of many, many, many. And so this isn't surprising, right? When you really just stop and think about it, consciousness takes many different forms, animates many different forms simultaneously. And so if we tap back into our multidimensional self, this thing that some people call the Oversoul, we have access to all kinds of different perspectives from different life forms in different star systems even, and that some of them are quite advanced from a consciousness standpoint, and they're really excited and eager to lend their help, their perspectives to us directly, because they're really just another aspect of us. And that was really exciting for me in 2016 and 17 to get to know a lot of my different aspects from different star systems. And it really catapulted my own understanding and kind of octave of embodiment that I'm participating in here in the physical as a human. So from healing to telepathy to channeling to all of it, it really quantum leaped my experience as a human being. I mean, that's why the tagline for Multidimensional U is "Let's revolutionize what it means to be human," right? So it's simply kind of a plugging into a much larger body of consciousness, if you will. That is the multidimensional self. And of course, we have to kind of wade through a lot of different layers in order to access that. And what do I mean by layers? I mean fear, dogma, media programming. There's a lot that says, you can't trust what you experience when you're experiencing it through inner sight. That's just your imagination, right? Skeptic programming. There's just a lot of different layers that we have to go through, right? So as I went through that process and I really began to trust what I was experiencing more and more, I realized that the payoff was pretty extraordinary, right? And I talked about this in the last episode with my guest Gujit, my aspect Gujit, about healing. That alone has huge payload for us, to tap into your multidimensional self and bring just the physical and emotional healing abilities forward, from more advanced, if you will, aspects of yourself, just further down the journey in terms of exploring healing. And then there are many more. So what are we talking about when we see these different things? I often get asked the question, do you see the different beings of your multidimensional self? Yes, the answer is yes, but not using physical sight. That requires, I think, a lot of effort on their part to move into a level of density, right? Down into this contracted density. So it's all telepathic using the pineal gland and inner vision. This brings me to one of the stories I wanted to share today, that things are definitely moving quickly now. So I often will close my eyes, especially at night. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and the inner sight is showing me the beautiful interplay of a milky white field of light that comes, emanating out, followed by an inky black. And it's the dance of the two co-creative forces of our universe of light and dark. And it's just absolutely beautiful to be in that space, the yin and the yang. And this morning, as I was trying to go back to sleep after our cat woke us up, I saw what I haven't seen since I was at the Conscious Media Festival in Austin in 2018. During the group meditation at the end of that event. And it was this beautiful, purpley, periwinkle colored, flowering, pulsating, amazing, expanding light. And this light was just moving through me over and over again, along with the light and the dark. And then this morning I had several series of ringing in the left ear this morning. And so I can just tell, there's frequency adjustments happening. And when we talk about the multidimensional self, we're really talking about connecting with our other aspects of ourselves who reside in a different set of frequencies, like changing the radio dial, right? Just to try to kind of break it down into everyday language that maybe everyone can understand. We're tuning into different dimensions of reality and to our different aspects that reside there. So that is some background on the multidimensional self. I hope that that's helpful before I go into channeling my Andromedan aspect. So it's nice to see you all here. I just popped over into the chat. Hello, Phil. Hi, Gina. Hi, John. So, all right. So let's shift gears here. And maybe I'll give you a little bit of background here. Obviously, I go by Asia Andromeda, identify Andromeda as home. That revelation came to me maybe 8 years ago when I was fairly frustrated with being on Earth, and I demanded to know where I was really from. And the answer popped right in, and it said the Andromeda Galaxy. And I went, all right, I just felt a sense of relief, like confirmed that, this is not my home. It didn't feel like home. And there's something tangible, right, as a response. And then, of course, given the explanation I just gave you of my multidimensional self, I came to realize that, there's a lot more to our identity than just one singular. I'm a Terran, Earthling, I'm an Andromedan, I'm a Pleiadian. Actually, we're all of it. We're a plurality. And there are some star systems in which we've spent a lot of time, and they feel like home in the same way that, in one lifetime on this planet, if you spent most of your life living in Venezuela, that would feel like home. You may have visited other places. Now, I say that with a caveat because I know many of you have spent a cluster of lifetimes in one country on this planet, and you may not be living in that country in this lifetime. And so you can feel it. Maybe you travel to this country in the other country in this lifetime and be like, this feels like home. For me, that is France. Most of my lifetimes on this planet have been in France. So when I go to that country, I feel like I've hit the ground running, and I know many of you can relate. So Andromeda for me is like that. It's where I mastered my own ascension and evolutionary process. So of course it's going to hold a lot more emotional weight for me. So I was trying to make sense of a lot of downloads that I was given last week, doing a lot of preemptive emotional processing for the human collective, right? We've talked about things are bumpy right now, but they're going to continue to get even bumpier. And I had to process, I think like many of you know, a lot of what's coming down the pike and go through a grieving process myself of just the discomfort that the human collective is going through, will have to go through, just like I had to go through my deconstruction process. And I know many of you have had to do. And then to really get through that and be in position to be able to hold space and stabilize the field. So kind of in the middle of that, at the tail end of that processing last week, I was really asking for some more information. I need more context. I need to understand, what are we doing here? It's getting a little bit, chaotic, and it's discernment, the need to discern is an all-time high. There's lots of information flying around. And one of my Andromedan aspects showed up. And my Andromedan family is funny. They like to support me in a very playful way. And so once in a while, they'll pop in and ask me how the child's play on Earth is going. And I know that they do this for kind of two reasons. One is to remind me that we actually are here for child's play and to reclaim the inner child and to move back into a state of open-hearted innocence, but also to help me check myself and the amount of maybe buying into this is hard I've been doing, and to remind me this is not a big deal. You've done this before. Take a breath, return to child's play. And so this Andromedan aspect is a masculine male aspect. And what he reminded me was that it's really important to shift the way we embody. So he reminded me to just take a moment as I was seated there to expand my field out. And if you do that now, if you take a deep breath in and you let yourself expand way beyond the confines of your body, and you move back into something that we did in one of my groups over the weekend. Move into the collective self versus the individual self, and you claim a much more expansive embodiment. Then you can feel it. Everything all of a sudden feels calmer. You're not feeling super disconnected and, out floating at sea, adrift, not sure where you are. You feel much more like the ocean itself and the raft adrift. And then you realize the relationship between them is completely interconnected. And then I'll let him take over here in a minute so that you can have a direct experience. But he showed me very clearly that we are being asked to make a shift out of separation consciousness in some really profound ways. The first thing I can introduce before I turn it over to him to make sure I don't forget this is a little bit of a challenge to everyone, all the listeners this week. For the next 7 days, if you go to say the word they, especially when you're talking about world events, and you swap out that pronoun for we, watch what begins to change in your consciousness. And there's a level of oneness, unity, responsibility that takes you way out of the us and them. So I just want to put that challenge right there, kind of placehold that. We might come back to it. All right, so let's do that. So let's bring through my Andromedan aspect. We shift gears, and I'm actually going to channel with my eyes open. There's been lots of interesting things happening with Zoom technology. So I think it's important that I make sure that I can keep tabs on what's going on here. All right, so and some of you wonder about channeling. So what I'm doing basically right now is I'm shifting my consciousness, letting it move gently out of the way. A lot of energy usually comes right through right there, through the sinus area as a different consciousness comes in. So yeah, my Andromedan aspect is already right here. he's funny. He's waiting patiently for the handover. Greetings. It is wonderful to be here with all of you through my aspect that is Asia in human form. Take a moment to connect with my field, to connect with my pure heart intent. In this moment, your own heart's burdens are surfacing for you. Let them surface and move out through the front of your chest. Unburden yourself in this moment. And it is in this context of a lighter heart that I come to you with a message of great hope and indeed of great remembering. See the faces of your loved ones. See your own face in the mirror. See the faces of your neighbors. See the faces of your politicians. See the faces of people that would do others great harm. See the faces of criminals and terrorists. And as you look, you see all of your own prejudice, fear, anger, conclusions, and opinions. Come back to the mirror in your mind's eye and look at your own eyes again. See the distortion you could not see just a moment ago. And then come back to all the faces that you just saw and begin to recognize in the eyes of the other is yourself. And collapse the separation, the disconnection. Feel your two fields merge, the hearts merge, And in this space, you are able to grant incredible forgiveness to those who did not even know they were looking for it. This is the great shift out of separation consciousness that is required by each individual human who seeks to usher in a new era on your planet, one that is peaceful. But you must understand that this is absolutely an inside job. Communion with your higher self and the one source must be claimed. And in the same way, unity must be claimed. It is not something orchestrated outside of you or for you. It is something that each and every one of you facilitate. Every single day, it is a choice to look into the eyes of another, to collapse the separation, and to move forward as one. This does not mean that you do not have an individuated experience or different ideas. It means that you collapse the illusion, the energetic, rigid structure that functions as prison cells, keeping you isolated and separate from one another. This separation allows for a great deal of manipulation. The human collective continues to be greatly manipulated via its emotional collective construct. There are patterns and constructs that have been routed out, programmed out, and they are easily moved this way or that way. These manipulations cease to lose their power when each and every one of you collapses the separation constructs between you. So this would be acting out of kindness, love, and compassion, and taking acts of kindness to a completely different level. I am pleased to bring you this message of remembering. Okay, so there he goes. Ooh. I always get a little bit of a buzz when I bring in a different consciousness, especially such a high level one. What a beautiful thing that he did for everyone, myself included, in helping to bring forward heavier energies out of the heart space right at the top so that he could do with us what he's asking us to do with one another. So he did share this with me over the weekend, and I began practicing immediately. Everywhere I looked, everyone I looked at, I have begun to see them in this way and to choose to see them as me. And it's a multidimensional maneuver where you connect to their field. You can, your eyes and your conditioning will immediately judge and put them in a box and think that you see and know something. And then in that moment, you have to just hold it, and let that dissolve and let the connection take place. And then something very different transpires. And while we maintain individuated forms, there just isn't the distance is the easiest way to translate that. So much distance between individual humans collapses and is gone as we do this work. So I encourage everyone to shift out of the they and to the we, to practice this really powerful technique with one another, and then to report back, maybe even in the comments of this live video. I'd really like to hear how it goes. Or if you're listening in the podcast, send us an email at info@multidimensionalu.com. I'm going to think for my own headspace right now. I mean, I would obviously expect that this means that kind of probably what happens for a lot of starseeds already, you become that much more approachable, and people begin telling you, they begin speaking to you from their heart. Maybe these are things that they haven't even been able to tell their spouse, but this field of open oneness connection that you've created, they feel like they can unburden themselves, right, in this space. That's what I would expect. I'm going to ask my Andromedan aspect right now on What else to expect? The first thing he's showing me is to expect a lot of surprising new self-awareness to come up first, and that your own very first important recipient of forgiveness is going to have to be yourself. So use this exercise gently with yourself. Be gentle. You're going to notice some things maybe you haven't seen about yourself and the way that you see the world. So just let that move through without shaming yourself or feeling guilty about it. Just be the witness for that. And then the other thing he's showing us is that children are going to be much more attracted to your field because you're an open recipient in a way that a lot of adults aren't, to who they are and what they've brought. You know, these are the star kids I'm always being asked to speak about. And then finally, he's showing me that a lot more collaborations will begin to organically put themselves together because we just aren't operating in the distance. Now, what's coming to me in this moment is how paradoxical that in an age of social distancing that we're being asked to engage in because of the pandemic, we are turning to multidimensional technologies of collapsing distance energetically. So practice this not just with people you see on the street, but with anything you see on television, right? And see if you can't collapse the energy that way. Wow. As always, I am just mind blown at what we're capable of, what's possible. And I thank you for being here with me live, or if you're catching the recording. So be sure to leave a comment on how this impacted you, what your insights are. Come back in a few days as you discover more of this. And yeah, this is just what this time is about, isn't it? It's about turning inward like never before and firing up these incredible multidimensional technologies. I think in closing, what I'll share is that I've been questioning, it seems paradoxical to follow my divine guidance last year and get rid of my cell phone, totally gone. It hasn't been in my life. Get used to that, and then also be asked to show up more visibly here. And I'm beginning to realize that what we're beginning to fire up while we're still using out external mechanical technology is we're beginning to really fire up our inner technology. So inner vision, right? We have television and we have inner vision. And so I encourage you all in between shows to connect with your own multidimensional aspects, connect to my higher self, and pretty soon we won't need the reliance on technology, which seems really fantastical in a way. And yet, how do we talk to a being in the Andromeda galaxy like that? It's using this incredible multidimensional infrastructure that we have, that we are, and that clearly is making a comeback on planet Earth. All right. Well, I love you so much. Have a wonderful next couple of weeks between live shows. Yeah, have a magical multidimensional rest of your day. And I love you all. Go break down some energetic walls.